There were others, not in the distant past, of dinosaurs and creatures we can barely imagine. Recently, geologically speaking, yesterday, Homo neanderthalensis, Homo erectus, Homo heidelbergensis, the Denisovans, a species we only discovered because a child's finger bone survived in a Siberian cave long enough for us to find it. Homo floresiensis, 3.5 feet tall, with a skull the size of a grapefruit, hunting pygmy elephants on an island in Indonesia. It crossed at least 2 open water barriers to get there, with a brain 1/3 the size of yours. Homo naledi, burying their dead in cave systems so narrow that the researchers who found them had to exhale completely just to squeeze through. Pitch dark, 1/2 mile underground. Someone carried their dead into that darkness deliberately. We still don't know why. 8 species, all of them human, all of them gone, and you are here. The question is not just why they disappeared. The question is why you didn't. Why this particular branch? Why these particular genes? Why, out of every human lineage that existed on this planet, the one that produced you is the only one still standing? That question has no clean answer. And anyone who tells you it does is not being honest with you. Before we go further, we need to say clearly what science knows here and what it doesn't. We know the approximate dates when each species disappeared. We know there was overlap, periods when multiple human species existed simultaneously on the same planet. We know that Homo sapiens and Neanderthals interbred, which means the boundary between species was never as sharp as we draw it on diagrams. And we know that the disappearances correlate, not perfectly, but suggestively, with the arrival of our ancestors in each region. What we do not know is what actually caused each extinction. The honest answer, the one that holds up under scrutiny, is that we have correlations and hypotheses. We do not have a mechanism we can point to and say, this is what ended them. That uncertainty is not a failure of science. It is the actual state of knowledge. And it matters, because the stories we tell ourselves about why we survived reveal more about us than they do about the past. For most of the 20th century, the answer was simple. We were smarter, better tools, better language, better capacity for abstract thought. The other species were evolutionary dead ends, less capable versions of what we would eventually become. We won because we were better. That answer is wrong, or at least dangerously incomplete. The Neanderthal brain was not smaller than yours. In some specimens, it was larger. They controlled fire for 400,000 years before our species existed. They made jewelry. They buried their dead. They adapted to Ice Age Europe with a sophistication that kept them alive for 200,000 years, in conditions that would kill most modern humans within weeks. Homo erectus survived for nearly 2 million years, longer than any other human species has ever existed, including us. If longevity is the measure of success, Homo erectus was the most successful human who ever lived. And they are gone. The simple answer, we were smarter, we were better, does not survive contact with the evidence. So what actually happened? The most honest current answer involves several things happening simultaneously, none of which alone is sufficient. Numbers. When Homo sapiens arrived in Europe around 50,000 years ago, the total Neanderthal population may have been as low as 70,000 individuals across an entire continent. 70,000. That is smaller than the crowd at a sold-out football stadium, spread across millions of square miles. And within that number, Neanderthal groups were small, between 5 and 15 individuals, isolated from each other, going years, possibly decades, without contact with another group. That is not a civilization. That is a population already on the edge of silence. Networks. Imagine a winter that kills everything in your valley. Your group is too small to survive on what's left. A Neanderthal group in that situation had nowhere to turn, isolated, unknown to the groups 50 miles away. A Homo sapiens group in the same valley had trade partners, had people who owed them favors, had someone, somewhere, who would share. When the climate swung, and it swung hard during this period, temperatures shifting by degrees within a single human lifetime, that network was the difference between finding food and not finding it. Disease. A population that had spent hundreds of thousands of years in Africa and the Middle East carries immunities that isolated communities in Northern Europe would not have encountered. You do not need violence to devastate a population of 70,000 fragmented people. You need a pathogen they have never met. Luck. The timing. The specific climate fluctuations of the period. Which groups happened to be in which locations when conditions changed. The Homo floresiensis, the hobbit humans of Indonesia, survived for 140,000 years on their island. Then a drought came. The rivers dried. The pygmy elephants they depended on collapsed. The ecosystem failed. A study published in early 2026 confirmed what the cave formations and fossilized elephant teeth already suggested. The hobbits didn't disappear because of us. They disappeared because the world they had built their survival around simply stopped existing. Evolution does not optimize for the best. It selects for the ones who happen to be in the right place when everything else went wrong. Maybe all of these, probably all of these, in proportions we cannot yet calculate. And here is the part that most accounts leave out. They did not all simply die. Some of them became part of you. The Neanderthals did not vanish cleanly. They interbred with your ancestors across waves of contact spanning thousands of years. The boundary between species was porous, more porous than the diagrams suggest. Some of what they were is still here, running inside you, doing things your body needs done. The species we think of as defeated were not entirely defeated. They were partially absorbed. The line between survival and extinction for them was not a wall. It was a gradient, which means the question, why did you survive when they didn't, has a stranger answer than it first appears. Part of you did not survive. The parts of Neanderthal DNA that were incompatible with human biology were filtered out over 50,000 years, generation by generation, until they disappeared. Scientists call the empty stretches where their DNA should be Neanderthal deserts, places in your genome where their sequences were tried and rejected, like scar tissue where something used to be. And part of them did survive, in you, in your immune response, in specific adaptations that their lineage spent hundreds of thousands of years developing. The survival was not clean. It was not a victory of one species over another. It was a merger, partial and imperfect, that left traces in every human being alive today who has ancestry outside of sub-Saharan Africa. You did not simply outlast them. You carry them. The next time you look at a reconstruction of a Neanderthal face, heavy brow, wide nose, eyes that look almost familiar, you are not looking at something that failed. You are looking at something that partially succeeded. That found a different path through the same impossible problem of staying alive on a planet that does not particularly care whether you do. We are not here because we were the best answer to that problem. We are here because we were the answer that happened to work. In these specific conditions, at this specific moment, through a combination of population size and social networks and immune history and climate timing and pure contingency that we are still trying to fully understand. The others were not failures. They were different answers to the same impossible question. And some of those answers are still inside you. Next, when did humans start wearing clothes? The answer has nothing to do with modesty. It has everything to do with a parasite. And it tells us exactly when it happened, down to the millennium.